time of the Remagen Bridge.
Thank you, that's going to be useful, very useful to me.
My name is David Lowance, and it's April the 18th, 2005 at the Atlanta History Center for the World War II Veterans Project. And today we have the honor of having Mr. Robert J. Taylor with us, who was 19 years old, I think, when he went into the military. At the time he enlisted in the military. He's going to talk to us about what it was like to go up during the Depression years in the South, and where he was on Pearl Harbor Day, what made him join the military, and what he did, and what's happened to him since. And Mr. Taylor, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, thank you. Starting off with the Depression, I remember one instant of the Depression. My father was in the wholesale drug business, and they had all kinds of what they call NRA and National Recovery Act things at the time. And toothpaste manufacturers would put stamps inside that toothpaste in the carton, and helping people to remember the Recovery Act. But my experience was I had a whole lot of them given to me. I used to sell them in school. Dirt cheap price, but anyhow, it made me Coca-Cola money anyhow. And that's about all I remember of the Depression, except I think we housed about half of the family on my mother's side and my father's side. They'd stay with us for a month or two or three till they could get a job.
Where were you living at that time?
At the corner of, at the junction of East Lake Drive and Bonsteland.
So you grew up in Atlanta?
After I was 5.
After you were 5.
I started off in Atlanta from Montgomery's Rock Springs Road for a year, and then moved over. And of course, at that time it was permissible. You rode your bicycle to school. It was about 3 miles through what is now Fernbank over to Druid Hill School.
Oh, goodness.
So that was, I could get there quicker than somebody could drive. I don't remember, at least at my age, I was not inconvenienced by the Depression that I can remember, except having a lot of people living in our house at the same time.
Do you remember anything about the war going on in Europe during the late 30s when you were a teenager?
I had one perspective on it, which would be a little bit unique. I had asthma, and then I had to drop out of school when I was just barely 12 years old. And so I joined the Boy Scouts. And during that spring when I was not in school, I really zeroed in on Scouts. And the Scoutmaster took me on a trip that summer, that was in 37 I guess, to Mexico, driving. Dirt road in Mexico, most of it. And he came back, wrote a diary. My mother told me to write a diary write like you would writing a letter to her and just mail it every 3 or 4 days, which is pleasant both ways. Anyhow, I did that. And then in 1939, I'll get my years confused. Beg your pardon, that was in 1935. In 1937, I had an opportunity to go to a World Jamboree, the National Jamboree of Washington, which was postponed because of infantile paralysis. And they postponed it a year. So they had both of them come up, World Jamboree and a National Jamboree. I went to both of those. The World Jamboree was in Holland. And I went back later to try to find out where the campsite was, but one cow pasture looked just like another. And in any event, I had an opportunity to have the honor of being stopped on a French road because I had taken a picture out of the window of the bus going to Versailles, and they saw some tanks out there. And so the French were very secretive about their tanks. I expect that the Germans had blueprints of those tanks, but nevertheless, I was stripped of my film and everything else I had on me by the French. I've had a little bit of a distaste for a lot of the actions since then. And then went on to Germany, and in Germany, down the Rhine River, Switzerland and in the Rhine River, we stayed in a little town, Bingen, and most of the night had German troops marching by in front of our hotel, and the troops being moved. And at that time, I was 12, 14, I was 14 then, At that time, we could smell war. Everybody could. They had Nazi troopers on every railroad car we rode on. Stayed with us as long as we were on the train. And just keeping an eye on us. There we were just, you might say, unblemished. We didn't even know hardly what they're talking about. But we came out of there knowing that war was imminent, just a matter of when. So you asked that
Yeah,
answer your
that's
question.
fascinating.
Then I went, after that trip, I went to prep school, military, Riverside actually, for 3 years and graduated in 40. And then went to Georgia Tech that fall. Then I was a radio amateur at the time. I thought, but I took chemical engineering, same as Vernon. And it took me 2 years to realize I wasn't a chemical engineer, but I still liked the engineering, and I wanted to get my degree in electrical. Ended up with mechanical, chemical, and electrical, a hodgepodge, which was fortunate what I chose to do later. And so I enjoyed Tech, and after the war, I ended up with a second degree from Tech. And he gave my mother an honorary degree while I was gone, and discontinued the degree before I got back. So I said, "You're the only one in the family that has an engineering degree." and so after that, I was working in the surgical supply business then, and 46, I guess it was, 46, 47. And at that time, I enjoyed my work. I got into, you were acquainted with Emory. I was minding my own business, basically making bids and things like that you do in surgical supplies, selling equipment and all that. And the man who was director of purchases at Emory, a fellow named Charles Hayes, he asked me to come out there and meet with him. And I did. He said, "Bob, I want you to call on research over here in the Woodruff building and all that. So these people are running me crazy. They ask me, they want something, but they don't know what they want." And said, "Would you mind spending part of an afternoon and one day a week satisfying to see what they want?" I said, "Yes, I'd be glad to. I'm not a salesman." He said, "I'm well aware of that." So I went out there and I would meet with the research people that had problems, and they would have to tell me in detail their problem before I could help solve it.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of backdoor learning of biology and all that on the side, and it was a fun part of my career. As I said, it wasn't very remunerative, but he would arrange to give me business in the hospital if I'd tend to that chore on the side. So I got to where I was pretty good at solving technical problems in the hospital. It was fun.
Where were you on Pearl Harbor Day?
I was at Georgia Tech. Well, I was at home at the time, but I was at Georgia Tech, and then we all knew about it, and doing church services mostly, and we realized that we were going to be eligible. I had 3 years of infantry training in prep school. I needed 1 more year to get a reserve commission. I did not do it. I went to Tech, so that was by the board. So basically, about that same time, they asked all of the students would they join the list of reserves. A lot of them who could pass the eye test went to the Navy part. You had to have 20/20. I did not have 20/20 vision, and so I was a member of the list of reserves. And then about a year later, he went up. The man that enlisted us in this went off in the Navy. And all the rest of us were enlisted, got called active duty in the Army. So we wondered just exactly what he had in mind when he recruited us. And it was rather interesting that we were notified on either a Wednesday or a Thursday to be at Fort McPherson Saturday morning for enlistment, to swear in. And by Monday morning, we were back at Georgia Tech in barracks with a new uniform on. And that was my induction to the Army, overnight. And a lot of same, got caught up in the same dragnet, I'll call it, or something. And so we went home, they didn't know what to do with us exactly, except we went off to basic training and anti-aircraft that June up in, not Belvoir, it was Fort Eustis, Virginia, which is next door to Williamsburg, and hot, all that. So that's where I lost my hearing with anti-aircraft. I was an acting gunnery sergeant that had to shove the shell in, no air plugs or anything. And it doesn't take many of those rounds to make you forget whatever you were talking about. And so we came afterwards. They didn't need us right away, so they sent us back to Georgia Tech. And here we were back in school again at Georgia Tech in the Army, called ASTP. I forgot the acronym. And we stayed there till they could figure out what to do with us. And then we get a 24-hour decision and said, well, they want us, you make up your mind whether you want to go to OCS in the infantry or in combat in engineers. Well, I knew what the infantry was, so I decided a little novelty was in order and went to the engineers. That was at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. A lot of us were in the same basket. We ended up with a lot of MIT, Citadel, and other people. Similar boat we were in. And so when we finished all that, then we just scattered. And I ended up in combat engineer outfit in Brownwood, Texas, which is not where you think it is. It's 140 miles west of Fort Worth in the middle of nowhere. And you could see the downtown lights of Fort Worth if you climbed a hill. 140 miles. Good. And went through that, and then we went overseas. And we ended up in England. And then I was in OCS at the time of the Normandy invasion. That'll give you a fix on the time. And so after that was over with, I ended up in Texas, and then over that fall went overseas with the outfit to England for further training. And we went stationed at Weston-super-Mare, which is a resort town on the Bristol Channel, due west of London, straight on out beyond Bath and that area. And we took training there, and a good time of year was November, I guess it was, when we started training. And we were going along and thought we were scheduled for another month or two, and all of a sudden the Battle of the Bulge occurred. And then at the later part of December, they gave us 48 hours to pack and ship out. And we went down to, I can't remember the name of the town on the southeast coast of England. And then we boarded ships there in Conway. We went to Cherbourg in Normandy and got off there end of December, before the end of the year, still 44. And found out that the ship with all our bulldozers, trucks, and everything else had been sunk on the channel. And there we were, with whatever we had on our back. So they had to outfit us first, and that took a while. And we had a lot of outfits that were chewed up by the initial activities on Battle of the Bulge. And so we supported them on the beach overlooking the Guernsey and Jersey Island, which I see is in the news right lately. And you can look out there and see them. We had the job of clearing mines left by the Germans, a variety of them, either some English that seized in Africa, some of their own German mines, and some of the French mines, no American mines. Take them off the cliffs that overlooked the Guernsey and Jersey Islands. We had more casualties, I think, in that operation. We had the rest of the war, working on the cliff, taking the darn things up. And most of it was, you had a mine roll off in your face, you either die or you get a foot blown off or something. And so then, after that, they finally got us outfitted, and near Ypres, I guess it is, near Reims, I call it, and they call it Reims. And then we went on over to Liège, near Liège in Belgium, and then to Malmedy, which is notable because that's during the initial portion of the Battle of the Bulge. That's where the Germans overran some American outfits and shot them. Made a massacre out of them. And so it's still snow on the ground. And so our job was develop what they call a main supply route, or MSR. That at that time the front was very fluid, and we were on the north end of the bulge, and we had to figure out a way to get supplies through that main supply route until we could seize a better road to the north. Most of the roads led toward Cologne. So everything was to the north. It went the way we wanted to go. And we were to the south of that. And so it was an interesting time, but mainly when we made a breakthrough, or the Army did, to the north, there was between the two armies, is what it was, First Army and I guess Ninth. And as soon as they could seize the road going to Cologne, then our road was useless to them. Theirs was a whole lot better. So all the work we put into building a corduroy road, which is nothing but a series of logs lashed together, wired together, and you ride on top of that instead of sinking into a bog as the roads were then. Tanks will, most any road will tear it up. And so then it moved us over to the Rhine Plain between Bonn and Cologne to await, because there's still Germans in there as well as on both sides around us. So we were waiting for them, some Americans and anybody else, to help clear an area that we wanted to build a bridge across the Rhine for. That bridge wasn't expected to be built about May, and here it was March. And so we were ahead of time. And so we then were there, and we heard about the Remagen Bridge. And so the decision was made to capitalize on that seizure of the Remagen Bridge, at Ludendorff Bridge, Railroad Bridge, actually. And then Eisenach made that, I mentioned up there, and capitalize on getting a head start across the Rhine River, rather than a salt crossing, which nobody wanted to do anyhow. And so we were going to build our bridge slightly north of the Remagen Bridge at a town called Bad Godesberg, which is a suburb of Bonn, which became the capital for a good while. And that's where Beethoven was born, I think, that, for whatever it's worth. And we were situated trying to build this bridge. You want anecdotes as we go along? All right.
Anything you want.
One of them was while we were doing this waiting, the Germans had been surrounded and trapped by the Rhine River, which Hitler wouldn't let them cross, and us. And so 100,000 or so Germans out there in that field, that area, Rhine River Plain, I'll call it. And it was very fluid. That's when they had 1,000-plane raids coming over in the morning, going further inland, but nevertheless, it's steady rural plains all day long. And then when we, in that plain, Germans all mixed up. They didn't know which way was going, who was the enemy and who wasn't. And we had a lot of them surrounded, not the infantry, but we were not part of that. Had them surrounded in this field, hundreds, thousands of Germans there. And here comes this German general, and he thinks they just out there playing around. He gets out of his, whatever they call a Jeep, and says, shape up, here's the enemy, and go at it. And and fella tapped him on the shoulder and said, "General, I'm an MP and you're not going anywhere. Just have a seat." Which really struck everybody pretty funny at the time. And so, there's a lot, on the Remagen Bridge, I had a job in a company at the time, but I heard about a town, a champagne factory called Linz, on the other side of the Remagen Bridge, just upstream about a mile or so. You can look at it on the map. And so they said that there was a lot of stuff there that soldiers might be interested in. So I went down and talked. I could speak some German, and had a Belgian guard on his outfit over there in Linz. I wanted to know about what they had over there and whether it was worthwhile it was convoluted or not. And he said, well, they were going to move out. He was representing a division, and they were going to move out at noon, and Corps was going to come in and put the headquarters in at about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I said, you mean from noon till 2 or 3 in the afternoon nobody's going to be here? No, we'd all be gone. I said, oh. So I radioed back and told First Sergeant to put all the empty water cans he could in a 2.5 ton truck with tarpaulin on it and come down, don't ask any questions. and he did. And so we met there and loaded in all the water cans we loaded in mostly red wine in bulk, and then about 1,200 bottles of champagne on the side. And
This is an executive decision you made by yourself?
sure, it's called a school solution to opportunities. I don't know which. In the engineers, you had.
Did you share?
Hmm?
Did you share, or did you drink it all yourself?
I'm getting to that. Well, we divvied it out in the company I represented, and I was a lowly lieutenant in it. But then I had no. But they knew what a good deal was. And after about 2 or 3 days, guess what happened? The men came and says, "Lieutenant Taylor, we need coffee. We don't need any more wine. You taking all our water cans." So we had to give up some of the wine or dump it or something. Anyhow, at the time I gave some. I wasn't really forward thinking, but I knew it was good politics. I gave it to group headquarters. The battalion answered to a group, which was directly under First Army. And so I gave a good bit to them. I thought no more about it. They would share it. But about 2 or 3 weeks, they invited me to take somebody's place up there at group headquarters as liaison officer between battalion and group. Well, you eating mess kits, battalion, you're eating china at group, off of china utensils. So my decision was very easy. So I went with them to the remainder of the war, representing the battalion. And one thing in any war, in any situation, information is valuable. They all want to know what poop from poop is, what's going on, in other words, what's the score. And so I was in a position to tell the battalion a lot about what was going on, because the fellow I usually bunked with, he was a pilot that flew the officer from the group up to the Army each day and came back, and that was with the big information. And then the smaller information came directly from them out of group. So we had a vague idea of what was going on, which is invaluable when nobody knows anything. And of course my hours were terrible. I would have to, we sit in on a meeting start at 6 in the evening. We sit in on a dinner and then have meetings about what had transpired that day. You had to write a report earlier than that. And then they went over what the orders that came down from the Army. And then the group would decide how to allocate those chores, immediate chores and long-range chores. And then when you do that, it was broken down not by me, but by somebody there in the staff, what our battalion was expected to do the next day. So I'd have to type all this up, which I could do courtesy of 8th grade typewriter, and then get the Jeep and drive, and I would go try to find out where battalion was. In the dark, over roads that you never knew whether there was going to be any shells in the middle, shell holes and everything else, but wherever. And I would wake up the operations officer and the commanding officer at battalion and pass on the information to them, and then try to find my way back to the group at night in the dark. Because we had these little silver lights in the front, just little blue lights, and it's fun doing that at night, not knowing where you are. It made an interesting time. I'd get back somewhere between midnight and 2 or 3 in the morning. Then I'd go to bed, and somewhere around 8 o'clock I'd be up. And then my job then was to go out and see if the battalion was actually performing what the information that had been passed on to them. Then write up a report for that evening, next meeting at 6 o'clock that evening. So that's a very interesting job, no sleep, but a lot of interest. And so I did that to the end of the war. And at that time, after the Remagen, we went around to a town called Paderborn, which is where on the Ruhr, they closed the gap, encircled all these Germans and the Ruhr, and we met in Paderborn. We were there at that time coming from the south, and so then that was seized, Paderborn, and closed the trap. Then we went on further toward a town called Eisenach, which is on the road to Berlin, one of the autobahns. It had been bombed a bit, but that was our job to fix up bridges and highways anyhow. And so at Eisenach, we stayed there till the end of the war. And it was in what is now became East Germany. And that in itself has a side effect that one of the men there, Eisenach is near a town called, a little castle they called Wartburg. Wartburg is just a little south of town. And that's where Martin Luther threw the ink pot at the devil, and in your history book. And so that would just kind of give you an idea of where it was in the status. Anyhow, I got one morning I said, Lieutenant, come down here and see us. We got a bunch of stuff in crates, so we don't know what it is. It was a little bit south of Eisenach. Went down there, had a whole lot of crates packed in women's clothes. And inside that were these instruments. You could tell they were scientific, Zeiss microscopes, spectrophotometers, all this stuff. But later, I'm telling you where it came from, because we didn't know at the time till later. It came out of Paderborn, which is on the Baltic Sea, is where the development was for the V-2 rockets. And it had their research for rockets with all the metallurgical research instruments they needed. And so these were the metallurgical research instruments they had sent down there to keep them out from being seized. Well, there they were, and we finally got around to recognizing they were valuable. You're not supposed to do this, but I decided to crate them all up again and send them to Georgia Tech. And they used them for about 25 years for the auction. And they couldn't admit they had them. I wanted better football tickets is what I wanted. They couldn't admit they had them because the federal government couldn't step in and say, this is war booty. It's ours, not Georgia Tech's. So they couldn't fess up. But they showed it to me and showed me how they were using it. And I still waiting on better football tickets.
What else did you steal?
So far it's been wine and stuff. Well, we had a salt mine or two that was full of war stuff that the Germans stored in. But I looked it over. It wasn't anything you and I would have. It had first aid kits by the ton. But that's about the end of my early looting days, I guess.
Did you, was there much shelling when you were building the temporary road up in the north end of the Battle of the Bulge, were you exposed to much enemy combat?
No, we were a little bit too far behind the front lines for the major artillery to hit us.
No.
And that's the only thing that could hit us. And then we moved up closer, but the pressure was driving toward the Rhine, and they weren't not too interested in our little segment of the front there. And we were about 5-10 miles behind the front line, I guess, 5 miles. So you could reach us, but nobody figured we were worthwhile shooting at.
When you went by Malmedy, did you know what had happened there at the time?
Yes, we did. They told us. I mean, it was common knowledge that the massacre was there. And I recovered some of the morning call reports. One of the units that was overrun, and it just left in the snow, and I picked them up and forwarded them on in. Which I didn't read them exactly. I just sent them in. But they were completely overtaken and then, lined up and shot.
Yeah.
We did not take. I was not part of that. I was late. We were a little later than that. We were a couple of weeks later.
Yeah.
But it didn't take many prisoners for a while. And that was the only way we could answer the question. And mostly it was the SS troopers,
Yeah.
almost entirely. It's the best we know. And they deserved no quarter anyhow.
No.
I don't think anybody had it. And even the Germans didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I guess any other outstanding things. Oh, there was one incident in building the bridge. This is the instance I'm talking about. That to build the bridge, we would take Rhine River barges and space them equally across the river, anchor them, and then build our Bailey Bridge, 2 lanes, across the barges all across one side of the other, about 1,000 feet difference across the river. And that worked out fine. And then one instant I had was they had a lieutenant in the Navy who had loaned us some LCVPs with landing craft vehicle personnel to get our supplies and men out onto the barges to build the bridge. So he and I were going down to Remagen to see what was going on, and 2 instances there, everybody got pinned down by some old arms fire. I didn't know where it's coming from. Found out it was a girl on the church steeple, and she was shooting holes in the pontoons of the temporary bridge they had. And this poor sergeant and somebody else listed man out with a bag of corks trying to plug the holes in the pontoons to keep them from sinking. And then the other thing was, as we were coming back and got out of the Jeep to look over the river, and I noticed along the right side, and somebody had opened up with what they call a machine pistol, a German machine pistol, aiming it at us. It hit the building behind me and it hit me in the neck. But it was not worthwhile to get a Medal of Honor or anything. Of course, I could reach up there and pluck it out, the bullet. It was stuck in that heavy muscle there.
Were you scared?
Huh?
Did it scare you?
Felt like a rock hit me.
Yeah.
And it made a bruise, and of course I had a hole where the bullet was, but it was not bad. I did it. It didn't have Band-Aids in that day, so the eye patch did the job. But you didn't think about things, and I wasn't about to apply for a Purple Heart with all the rest of the men that had gotten Purple Hearts had suffered severe injuries in Normandy taking those mines out.
Yeah.
So it never occurred to me to do anything. If I had known I'd come back a month earlier, I might have. Not at the time. And then on these Rhine River barges, we put a cable across one side of the other to keep the Germans from, which they tried to do, putting explosives in a barge, a small boat, float them down to our bridge and blow it up. And so we had the cable all set up. And then one day a P-47 fighter pilot hit the cable. Now that cable was only about this high off the water, about 3 to 4 feet. So his propeller had to be pretty low down to hit it. And of course that was into him. We hit it, bang. we got the word out, said leave our bridge alone. We had over 2,000 anti-aircraft guns protecting that bridge site. 2,000 of them. That's a lot of artillery out there just to keep the plane from coming. And then our own darn plane is the one that was threatening us. And so we got the word out, don't do it. Guess what happened within 2 days? Another one. Same results.
Were they striking?
P-47. No, they were
Scouting?
just zooming in across the bridge. From north to south.
How many had gone?
No, it's from north, yeah, it's from south to north. They were going down river.
Yeah.
And just flyboys, heading back home or something.
Did the
But
second,
after the second one, they quit.
did the second one crash also, or did?
He lost his life right then and there.
So both of them lost their life.
Oh yeah, no question. When you hit something like that at 3 feet off the water and you go into the Rhine River at 200 odd miles an hour, there's nothing left to talk about.
Good Lord.
But that was an anecdote. So that basically completes and our tour of duty at Eisenach. We were supposed to come back for retraining amphibious warfare back somewhere, and we were in Antwerp to get had American money in our hands. The ship was leaving the next day, and it had VJ Day, Victory in Japan.
August.
And so they held us over there, engineering troops, to help build facilities for the occupation troops, which stayed another year.
Oh, I see.
And that was not the high point of our tour, is to find out we go. We didn't know the time was going to be a year, but it was over a year before we got back home.
What were your reactions on VE Day and VJ Day? Were you just
VE Day, we were over there out of Eisenach, and not much, just almost another day in passing.
yeah,
It snowed that day, I think, up there, within a day or two of that.
yeah,
But it was not nobody got in the streets and cheered and all that, because we still knew we were heading toward Japan.
How about VJ Day?
Where was I on VJ Day? I was somewhere back, going to the coast to go on a boat, and then came back to Germany. So we were somewhere in Germany. I think near up the. I think that was time when we went up the River Neckar at Heidelberg, going up the River Neckar to Heilbronn, and we had occupied a castle within about a half a mile or so of there. And I think that's where we were.
Do you remember your reaction to Roosevelt's passing?
No, it wasn't that kind of news. I think everybody, and it didn't anticipate his dying, but didn't shock any of us. That's
Yeah.
before Truman got hold of it. I think, looking backwards, if it had to happen, it was glad we had Truman to make up his mind.
Yeah.
You never know what Roosevelt would have done, but I think he was strong enough to do the same thing Truman did,
Yeah.
but we didn't know.
Bob, what kind of reaction do you have thinking about the last 50 or 60 years since the war ended in terms of where we are today in America and what the world is like compared to what it was like when you were a Boy Scout being herded around by the Germans, realizing there were troops, what was evil and what was good compared to what we know today, and where do you think we're headed?
I don't know. I have 4 children that maybe think the same thing at times. I think it's that our generation is doing a better job than they did then. Later. Now I'm not sure about the current generation, but there was a pretty good sized gap in there that I think we were superior as far as our morality and thinking ahead, protection and all that, what we were fighting for. I think we lost the idea just exactly what we were fighting for. There's no question about it doing when I was in the service, what we were doing.
Yeah.
And nobody complained, nobody said, I want to go home. And didn't have Jane Fonda around to tell us.
Yeah.
So that's just never crossed our mind. And I think we are getting a little bit toward that line of thinking now. I really do. I think we're getting, I'll call it morality if you want to, but I think we're getting where we judge things like that from the bigger picture,
Yeah.
which is good.
What kind of lessons would you like to, or ideas would you like to impart to my generation, your children's generation, your grandchildren's generation? What would you advise them to do?
First, to get an education. That'll give you some choices. And I think, too, is have a strong family so they can help you make decisions that you need to have made one way or the other.
Yeah.
And it's important for grandchildren, children, all that, to have some sort of strength in what they're going to do and want to do, and try to help them get there. I'm a firm believer in not doing things for your children, but making it available to them.
Yeah.
It's like my mother gave me the choice of adventure and travel, and I've imbued all of my children in adventure and travel and working hard too. Well, they've all done that. They didn't do it because I was a slave driver or anything. I had just taken them on some innocent adventures in my career. And I've taken my wife back a couple of times to Normandy and that area and redid it. I never had taken in the children.
Yeah.
But one way or the other, most of them have been over there. It's been something that changes each generation, I'm sure.
It does.
And I don't know, I have 2 grandchildren going to college next fall, and when I look and see what they're teaching, the professors are teaching, and just what's their political slant on things, I don't like that part of it. I think we could be a little more conservative. At least every professor that I've met in the last 10 years, if he hadn't been liberal, he was going to be. And that's not always good for our children. They need a little balance, a little more balance on on the outlook. I don't remember any professors ever telling me one thing or the other about who to vote for or what was right or wrong, and now the woods are full of them.
Yeah. Well, I want to express my appreciation to you for what you did for our generation and for the generations of your children and grandchildren, because we didn't say this earlier in the interview, but Mr. Taylor's sister was my next door neighbor when I was a teenager, and known the family and Mr. Taylor all my life, though we have never known each other before today. But I have a great deal of gratitude to you and your generation for what you did for us. Enabled me to go to E-River School and Miss Bloodworth's kindergarten while you were fighting cleaning up after the Battle of the Bulge.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you inviting me and listening.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I was going to loan you this if you want to peruse it. You may have it. I bought it on the Remagen Bridge.
Oh, we'll get that copy.
And then I think that, no, it's just the details. I bought one I got back home. Do you have a name of Bill Mitchell in that list of yours?
We can go find out.
We've got it down here. We do have it down
You
here.
do have?
Thank goodness.
And the reason I had it down there is he was a late discovery. He's a member of our Sunday school class along with Tom Bowles and Dick Allen. All, and we did not know each other and knew where we were connected anyhow. Bill was a tank driver as a replacement, and just barely got to the front. And they sent him on up in the tank to Remagen.
Okay.
When they were going into Remagen, so he had a real baptism of what was going on. Just about his first day of driving the tank, he ended up at the Remagen Bridge. And he might be eligible, but Tom Bowles is more fertile.
Okay. Thank you once again. We'll talk to you later.